From the most famous person you've never heard of, this is the Daniel Natal Show. When my son was young, he was diagnosed with autism. As a result, he was nonverbal until the age of 5. After that point, I tried to bulk up his linguistic abilities by taking walks with him and listening to audiobooks and reading books with him at night. I also tried to read to him from works on ethics and philosophy to try to build up his palette of intellectual concepts. Even today, though he can express himself adequately, he's trying to be more articulate, like his hero Demosthenes, who overcame a speech impediment and studied rhetoric to become the world's first lawyer. My son and I have read Aristotle's work on rhetoric as well as Cicero's, and we especially loved Quintilian. Quintilian especially provided deep insights on communication and talked about how one orator at the time would hire a flute player to hit certain notes that he would then modulate his speech around due to the subtle effect that modal changes had on influencing people. The lessons were so extremely sophisticated. I wanted to look up some videos online to see how far the art of speaking had progressed. Unfortunately, I was disappointed. When we clicked into videos on debate and oratory, it was all primitive stuff, like brush your hair or wear a clean shirt. I was shocked to see how far we had declined in the art of rhetoric, of oratory. We stumbled upon one professor who shared an insight into why this might be.
We're going to only talk about two individuals. We're going to talk about Cicero. We're going to talk about Quintilian. But really, what we're really discussing is the relationship between rhetoric and power, as it is exemplified by the context and the historical backdrop of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. So let's start with Cicero. The relationship between power and rhetoric can generally be summed up in one small sort of idiom, and that is that the greater the need for rhetoric is built when there is a more decentralized government. So the more decentralized a power, the greater the need for rhetoric. The opposite is also true. The more centralized a power, the less the need for rhetoric.
So basically, when you're in a republic, political power resides in the ability of the statesman to persuade people. By the way, Aristotle in Rhetoric, Poetics, and Logic calls this political rhetoric. In a digression, he divides rhetoric into two basic categories. And category 1 is forensic rhetoric. That comprises the communication skills of, say, an attorney, creating a narrative about the past to convince a jury. So just like a forensic autopsy in medicine, forensic rhetoric is trying to figure out what happened in the past. Political rhetoric, by contrast, is trying to persuade people about something that takes place in the future. So if a politician is trying to convince the public to use funds from the treasury to build a new port or bridge and painting the picture of all the wealth and economic activity that this will bring, he's engaging in political rhetoric. At any rate, just as the professor described, as republics die and empires emerge, the need to bring the public along with you, with persuasion, diminishes. Instead, in empires, brute force is used, and the public isn't consulted at all. Persuasion no longer matters. Only power does. In The Birth of Politics, Melissa Lane agrees with this, saying, "Another participant looks back to the greater effectiveness of rhetoric under the Republic, which, although torn by disagreement and civil strife, was genuinely governed by the convictions imparted to the people by its orders." He plays with the idea that in genuinely well-governed states, there is no need for orators. Orators reigned in Athens and Rhodes, not in Sparta or Crete. If a single wise monarch makes all the decisions, oratory would indeed be useless. Note the term well-governed state. This is the same pitch technocrats make, saying that they just want more efficient government, by which they mean the removal of purposeful inefficiencies and tensions we built into the government as a form of checks and balances. Remember how all the dictatorships of the 20th century promised more efficient governments run along scientific lines? This was their euphemism for removing the checks and balances that make a republic messy and noisy, but also act like a fail-safe mechanism to prevent a dictator from arising. Are republics less efficient than authoritarian regimes? Yes, but the inefficiency is purposeful. We pit various segments of the government against each other, fostering an adversarial relationship so that too much centralized power doesn't fall into the hands of one man or one small group of men. So beware con artists singing to you the praises of more efficient government. This is akin to the flimflammery of politicians singing the praises of simplifying the tax code, by which they mean removing all the loopholes that protected the working class people. The point here is, as the republic withers, the art of rhetoric and oratory withers with it. Muddled speaking leads to muddled thinking. And that's what we've been getting lately, especially among the youth. They're wholly taken in by contradictory talking points and obvious double standards. We've mentioned them before. Things like premise A, races don't exist, but premise B, white people are evil. If races don't exist, how can white people exist? Or premise A, a man can't have an opinion on abortion because he doesn't know what it's like to be a woman, but premise B, men can be women. Cynical propagandists feed them this mishmash of nonsense every day on TV and social media and at school, and if you don't understand rhetoric, you won't see how you're being manipulated. As John Stuart Mill said, it is in the interest of the king or aristocracy to keep the people at a low level of intelligence and education. The antidote, of course, is more speech, more communication. Too bad the oligarchs have a thing for censorship, and they also have a thing for politicians with no communication skills.
I'm Jill Biden's husband, and I work for Cedric Richmond.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other Biden.
That's not true.
No, let him go.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
Chris. I just did Chris. No, I just did Chuck. I tell you what, man, these are back to back. Anyway.
No, it's
I don't know
okay.
how you do it early in the morning.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
This is more than a joke. This is a sign that oratory is no longer valued or needed. Oratory, after all, is a requirement in a republic. If you start seeing politicians who no longer need to persuade the people, know that you're, well, let's just say, in something other than a republic. People fear any political leader who has his finger on the red button. What political leaders fear is people having their finger on the red button, the subscribe button. Push it and see their narratives explode. Also consider donating to help keep these videos coming. And don't forget our website and newsletter, thenewamerican.com.